Hafiden, good afternoon. The Imina 35 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. We are now on bill number 73-35 COR, and I will ask Legislative Secretary Senator Amanda Shelton, you are recognized on this bill.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I'd like to move Bill 73-35 to the second reading file for discussion.
And is that not amended, just,
As introduced.
and if you can just read the title,
Read the
please.
title. Bill 73-35 COR is an act to amend Section 8105 of Chapter 8, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to revising the makeup of the Guam Council of Senior Citizens to reduce the number of members to better facilitate quorum and the effectiveness of the council.
Assiduous Masi, Legislative Secretary Shelton, you may proceed.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker. Bill 73-35 is very straightforward. It seeks to revise the makeup of the Guam Council of Senior Citizens to reduce the number of members, to help them reach quorum, and to be a more effective council. Earlier this year, many of us sat through briefings from the new administration's transition team as they issued a report stating that there are 112 boards, commissions, and councils in Guam law, mandating a total of 945 members. The report found that the sheer number of boards and commissions is overwhelming, and that further, some boards are unnecessarily large, which led to a constant lack of quorum. One such board with a large number of statutory members under my committee's oversight is the Guam Council of Senior Citizens. And after meeting regularly with the Division of Senior Citizens, we found that they were having trouble meeting quorum and effectively pushing issues through the board. This board was created by the 14th Guam Legislature and has had chronic issues with achieving quorum, which has stifled its productivity and was counterproductive to their original intent. At 17 members, it is one of the largest boards in the government of Guam. This bill seeks to drop down the number of members from 17 to 9 and have a quorum of 5 members. The statutory purpose of this council is to furnish leadership needed for long-range planning, except with the approval of the director on behalf of and in the name of the government of Guam, from any government or agency thereof or any person, natural or legal advisory services, donations, and gifts provided, however, that any grants in aid or other form of assistance involving a financial obligation on the part of the government of Guam shall require the prior approval of the governor and a determination by the division's certifying officer of the availability of funds. To adopt such rules and regulations as may be necessary to implement the provisions of this chapter, work along with the director for the coordination or implementation of programs, activities, and services for the elderly, serve as a Senior Citizens Housing Board, and in this capacity shall undertake the following: to make or cause to be made feasibility studies regarding the size, cost, site, financing, and planning for the proposed construction of senior citizens' homes, to select an appropriate site for the senior citizens' homes, to prepare or cause to be prepared preliminary plans for the construction of the senior citizens' homes, and to engage architects, engineers, contractors, subcontractors, clerical, and any other technical assistance necessary to carry out these purposes, and enter into any and all agreements necessary to carry out these purposes. These duties are still necessary, and the board responsibility as the Senior Housing Board is particularly crucial in planning for the long-term care of our Manamku. In order to facilitate quorum with the board, and at the request of the Division of Senior Citizens, Bill 73-35 reduces the board size again from 17 to 9 to have a more manageable board. I listened recently to a session with the AARP, And they kept talking about this thing called the silver tsunami, which is how are we going to prepare for an increase in our elder population? Because our people are living much longer now than before, and we don't have the plans necessary or the programs necessary to provide a meaningful quality of life to them. And so I believe that this board is more important than ever now, so that we can continue to listen to the wisdom and experience of our elders to help us continue to plan for the future. And so I ask my colleagues for their support of this bill. Sitius Masi, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Legislative Secretary Shelton. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, move to the third reading. Voting file.
Sitius Masi, Madam Speaker. I'd also like to thank the Division of Senior Citizens at the Department of Public Health and Social Services for their assistance in crafting this bill and for their support of this bill. And again, I urge our colleagues to support it as well. And I move for Bill 73-35 to be moved to the third reading file. Voting file, excuse me.
On that motion, without any objections, motion carries. We still have, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of bills on the agenda. I'm going to say, Senator Mary Torres, you still have Bill 135-35 COR. Would you like to proceed at this time? You are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much for permitting me to set aside this bill. Indeed, God works in mysterious ways. Just this morning, I was made aware that the compiler of laws is now uploading the 1997 foster care standards to the Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations. Madam Speaker, I'm very thankful to the compiler for finally deciding to move on these standards. After 26 years, they will finally be accessible to the public and to members of the foster care community. I am also in receipt of a letter that was transmitted to all of the members of this body during recess, in which one of our colleagues recommends that because of this action by the compiler, the bill should be sent back to committee. But despite this new information, Madam Speaker, our problem has not been solved. The action by the compiler of laws is just a byproduct of what the true intent of this bill 135-35 aims to accomplish. Over the past few days, we have listened to testimony from public health, our foster care parents, our child protective services, specifically describing the dire state of our foster care system on Guam. There are presently 276 foster care children on Guam right now. Kids waiting to be placed in a loving home. Kids who have been physically separated from their siblings. Our children shouldn't suffer because those in power neglect to place the rules and regulations where they belong. I implore you, Madam Speaker, to consider to send this bill back to committee and wait for the compiler to place it in the GAR and then offer a new bill does not address the urgent need facing our community right now. And that is the current limitation on the number of children a foster parent can take in. Nonetheless, I acknowledge that the compiler has decided to move in the middle of legislative action. So with that, I proffer to make an amendment acknowledging the compiler's powers. I'd like to read for the body, just to put everything into perspective, Title I, Guam Code Annotated, Section 1606. 1606 deals with the powers of the compiler of law relative to revisions. And I read, in preparing the Guam Code Annotated, the Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations, court reports, and other publications of the office, the compiler of law may A. Number and renumber chapters, sections, and parts of sections. B. Rearrange sections so that they fit harmoniously within the publication being prepared. C. Change reference numbers to agree with renumbered chapters, parts, or sections. D. Substitute the proper selection or chapter numbers for the terms, quote, the preceding section, this act, and like terms. E. Strike out figures where they are merely a repetition of words, written words. F. Change capitalization for the purpose of uniformity. And G. Correct manifest clerical errors or typographical errors. So with that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to proffer the following amendment, and a copy has been circulated to members of the body. The amendment I'd like to proffer is to page 17, to add a new Section 5 of the bill to read, Section 5, pursuant to 1 GCA 1606, Section 1606, the compiler of laws may renumber, rearrange, change reference numbers, substitute, strike out, change capitalization, or correct clerical or typographical errors in the rules adopted in Section 2 of this Act. I just want to reiterate, Madam Chair, that in taking this course of action, Bill 135-35, if you go back to the plain read of the legislative findings and intents, it states on line 3 of page 2, the heart of this matter is that it is the intent of the legislature to open more homes to children in need by permitting more than the current standard's limitation of 6 children, provided the total number of children is approved by the Bureau, and to further add such standards reflecting this allowance to the GAR. My going forward, notwithstanding what we've come to understand is the action of the compiler after all these years, doesn't take away the fact that at present, the standards have not been put into the GAR. 136 was an attempt to not only change one aspect of the standard, and there was a public hearing specific to that, but also to ensure that when this change is made, that it is finally uploaded into the GAR. So I don't think that anything about this bill is inappropriate or out of form. In fact, it is true to what is necessary today as we debate it. And so with that, I respectfully ask my colleagues to consider approving my amendment to add a new Section 5, as this will allow the compiler to rearrange, as she is already authorized to do, whatever we pass here today. And this will ensure that these standards be placed, renumbered, or rearranged however the compiler sees fit.
Thank you, Senator Torres. And that is on page 17. I'm going to go ahead and take just a very brief recess so that we can ascertain where we left off when the motion was set to set aside the bill. So a moment's recess. Jimena 35 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. Colleagues, thank you. I want to say that going back to bill number 135-35, with courtesy to the author of the legislation this morning, I had addressed her this morning to move to set aside until she got further clarification with information that was provided for her in the morning. That bill was set aside, but yesterday evening, we were in discussions. There was an amendment that was proffered that needed to be typed out by the good senator from Hagåtña, or Tamuni, and it was this amendment, the page 4, line 14, to amend 1902C of the bill to read, "See, a single person who is 21 years or older may apply to become a foster parent by filing an application with the Bureau. This would also include single parents, 21 years or older, unless approved as a special case by the Bureau." That was the amendment that was supposed to have been proffered and given and put on everyone's desk this morning. So at this time, before I entertain any other motion, I need to go back to Senator Pt.2, and you have the floor on that amendment. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the clarification and recognizing that I did have the floor. Madam Speaker,
Senator, with all due respect, it was the courtesy of the author to have the bill set aside. So I just want to note that for the record.
yes, and I appreciate that
Thank you.
for the
So
explanation.
please proceed.
That being said, Madam Speaker, the amendment that I proffered, I'd like to withdraw. And the reason why I would like to withdraw that amendment, Madam Speaker, is after doing my research on Bill 135-35, I was able to meet with the clerk's, the compiler of law's office. I had a great conversation with her, and Madam Speaker, based on our conversation, Bill 135 just duplicates a prior law, a law that was passed in 1997, 23-143, that became and signed into law. So that bill is very similar, or that law is very similar to this bill, except for one thing. And in fact, Madam Speaker, it's exact, except for one particular sentence in there that talks about the Bureau's authority to allow more than 6 children. That was it. Madam Speaker, we already have this on the books. In fact, the compiler of law doesn't understand why the bill never got on the website. I mean, why the bill never, or the law was never codified or published on the website until, Madam Speaker, when the bill was introduced into legislation. Didn't have a public hearing yet. And a particular office called the compiler of law and asked them about this. So, Madam Speaker, when this happened, they realized that Public Law 23-143 was never published or codified and needed to be done. As of this morning, Madam Speaker, I have a letter here from the compiler of law stating that Public Law 23-143 will be published and codified on the website in this section. In fact, Madam Speaker, I even have a draft of how that is going to happen, and I provided this letter as well as the draft from the compiler of law, citing that it's going to be Chapter 9, Article 4 in the GARR. So, Madam Speaker, this law is already on the books. And as of tomorrow morning, this law will be in play. So what we're doing today is trying to pass a bill that's
Senator.
exactly the same as
Senator,
this law.
based on that, do you have a motion to ask the bill to go back to committee? That is in order right now.
Madam
That's
Speaker,
up
if
to
I
you.
could just have one more minute, please. I don't think I did that. If I could just have, what?
You know what? I'm going to take a moment's recess. Imina 35 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. Senator Titagui, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for indulging me. And as I mentioned, Madam Speaker, the compiler of law, we have recognized and passed into law 23-43, which is exactly the same bill with a small slight amendment. And this body, if we were to pass this bill, we're duplicating a law that's already in existence. Now, I have no problem with supporting increasing the amount of individuals, 6 children per foster care based on the director or the bureau's discretion. I have no problem toward that. What I have a problem is the way this is compiled. This bill says to add a new Article 9 to Chapter 1, Division 1 of Title 26, when, Madam Speaker, there is already an Article 4, Chapter 9. And this is not prudent of us to do so when there are already a law that does this. And what I was told, Madam Speaker, is that all they did was take public law that was signed and passed into law, 23-143, duplicated it and put it into Bill 135. And that's a bill we're going to pass. But what happened to Public Law 23-143? It was already passed into law. It's as simple, Madam Speaker, that the compiler of law, as I met with this morning, already has it codified, ready to go. They're just waiting for IT, and I pass this out to all my colleagues to see that it will be published and codified. And they promised me by no later than tomorrow. That being said, Madam Speaker, it's a simple bill to change from allowing the Bureau to accept more than 6 children in a foster home by simply making an amendment to Chapter 26, Article 4, Section 9405, once it's done. Madam Speaker, that being said, I tried to talk to the author of the bill to show her the difference, and I asked her whether they did talk to the compiler of law, and compiler of law said, no one ever came to me from her office. So, Madam Speaker, that being said, so we don't make a mistake, is that we send this bill back to committee. And I make a recommendation, Madam Speaker, to send Bill 135-35 back to committee.
So with that recommendation, that's in motion form? That's in
Yeah.
motion form? There,
I make a motion to send Bill 135-35 back to committee.
135-35 COR back to committee.
Yes, ma'am.
One moment, there hasn't been objection, hold on a second. Yes, so before I entertain that motion, I'm going to entertain that motion to withdraw the previous amendment that we talked about earlier.
Yes, ma'am,
So
Speaker.
on the motion to withdraw the Senator Tello Titagui bill regarding the 21, the age 21 unless approved by a special case by the Bureau, that was a motion to withdraw. Are there any objections? Hearing? No. This motion needs to be satisfied. On the motion to withdraw this amendment, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. On the motion to send Bill 135-35 COR back to committee, there is an objection. On the amendment, anyone wishing to speak on the motion to send back? Senator Mary Torres, you are recognized. And then Senator Torres, Senator Taitano, then Senator Castro. Please proceed, Senator Torres.
Madam Speaker, in the legislative findings and intent, first page of Bill 135-35, Section 1, Line 2, Y legislature in Guam finds that the rules and regulations governing the standards for family foster homes on Guam was established pursuant to Section 2407 of Chapter 2, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, through Public Law 23-143 on January 2nd, 1997. No one has disputed, including the author of this legislation, that there has in fact been standards for family foster homes promulgated by public law 26 years ago. This bill was introduced in May 2019 to address a problem that was expressed. The problem being no one knew or could find these standards. There was no reference to these standards. They were in fact an appendix to the public law. In wanting to assist with the issue of foster family care shortages on Guam, not enough homes, I was working with stakeholders to determine what would be a very practical way to help alleviate the stringent caps so that there was some discretion, so that in the middle of the night, if a foster family, if CPS receives a child in their care, in their charge that they must place in the middle of the night, that they would have options if many of the available families already had the cap.
Senator Torres.
Yes, so my point is, my reason for, thank you, and I'll be brief.
Thank you, Senator Torres, but I would just want to note for the record that a motion to commit or to refer back is
Yes.
not debatable, and
Oh, I thought
I'm
that I was
going to
allowed to
ask-
comment, Madam Speaker, when you recognized me,
And-
because you asked if there was, so I apologize.
Thank you for the point of information. I'll take that as a point of information. On the motion, there was an objection. All those who support the motion to refer the bill back to committee, please signify by raising your hand. It's not a debatable motion.
Madam Speaker, it's a point of inquiry, and without legal guidance, I feel it's very unfair to vote.
Good Senator from Nimitz Hill, I want to share with you that based on motions and standing procedures, a motion to commit or to refer back is not debatable. So there was an objection on the floor.
So notwithstanding the
Yes, so you would have to
rules-
word it as a point of information. So,
Yes, so notwithstanding the House rules, I have a point of information or a point of inquiry.
please state your point of inquiry.
Yes, so it's become muddled to me, and so I want to understand from a legal point of view, if we go ahead with this bill, if we vote and amend and then potentially adopt this bill, is this something that the compiler of laws can resolve once he or she receives our work?
Who would you like to answer that? The author of the legislation?
Yes.
The Senator Mary Torres, would you like to answer that?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I want to iterate, first of all, that we were trying to place in the GAR through this legislation something that has not been put in the GAR. That's a simple byproduct of this bill. Secondly, Title I, Guam Code Annotated Section 1606, gives the compiler of law the powers relative to revisions. And I stated that I stated the points A to E previously, that the compiler of law absolutely has within her powers the ability to number and renumber, to rearrange, to change reference numbers, to substitute proper sections or change numbers for terms, to strike out figures, to change capitalization, any typographical or for uniformity purposes, and to correct clerical errors or typographical errors. So what I want to iterate is right now, as presented, this bill is valid to the situation at hand right now where it has not been codified. And regardless of what you do with this bill, it is absolutely within her prerogative. If the statute, if the section number should be here or there, that is what the compiler of laws does in terms of codifying bills. So yes, it is absolutely within her power to work this bill into the statute as she sees fit and proper.
Point of information, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Tello, before I answer that, I have to ask the good senator from Nimitz if that point of
No,
inquiry...
actually, Madam Speaker, this has to do with her question, and I spoke to the compiler of law. What we're doing
Senator
is ignoring a
Tadekwi,
prior
you are
law.
out of order. You are out of order. Madam, please. Senator Marsh Teitzno, does the answer to the point of inquiry satisfy you?
Well, you know, as I read this amendment, when it talks about substitute, strike out, clerical, typographical
Senator,
errors,
does it suffice or not suffice?
I'd like further clarification, so no.
Would you like to yield on the point of inquiry to any other colleague in this body or to legal counsel? Please.
Well, if the author of the bill could just further clarify that amended sections are within the compiler of law's ability.
Senator Torres? Did you want her to repeat the question, or would you like to
It is, from what I can read from 1 Guam Code Annotated, Section 1606, B, it does have rearranged sections in there.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator Torres. We are going to take a moment's recess. 35th. The 35th Guam Legislature will take a moment's recess to work on the amendment. Rimina 35 na legislature in Guahan is back from recess. The point of information has been satisfied. Senator Tello, there is an objection on the floor. Do you have, Senator Tello, I will recognize you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to withdraw my motion to send the bill back to the committee, and I have an amendment in place.
Please proceed.
Okay. No objections on that?
Oh, I'm sorry. On the motion to withdraw? No objections. Motion carries. Senator Tello.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first I would like to thank the compiler of law for coming down here and clarifying something with us. It was my concern from the very beginning that we don't duplicate what Bill 135 is doing to a previous law on 23-143. And it sufficed through our conversation, and it was also mentioned that usually a certain bill according to legal, it's called state the later in time governs. Meaning if Bill 135 were to pass, it would supersede the previous law. It would be renumbered. However, case law has been proven that implications to reply by implication is totally disfavored. So to make it absolutely clear, what we're doing here is to ensure that our Bill 135, supersedes Public Law 23-143. So my amendment, Madam Speaker, is on line 23, page 17, to add a new section of the bill to read, "This act shall supersede Public Law 23-143. And Madam Speaker, it's important to note that we do our due diligence with regards to bills or laws that are already in the books that are exactly the same way, that we don't become disfavored in any kind of case law. So that's what my amendment does, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Tadigui. On the motion, anyone wishing to speak? Senator Torres, you are recognized. Senator Tadigui, please.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
this is in fact a superfluous amendment, not necessary, absolutely not necessary. The effect of this amendment will happen whether this language is in the bill or not, so I would say it's not necessary, and I would object.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Anybody else on the amendment? Anybody else? If not, Senator Will Castro, I will recognize you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a point of information, maybe the point of inquiry, rather, maybe the author. First of all, I want to state for the record, I support the intent of the bill. In the event, though, the amendment shouldn't pass and the bill is voted by the majority member of the bodies, I'd like to have some comfort in knowing at least this much. The first question is, what are the technical changes? I know what we're trying to achieve. It's to lift the cap. So as the bill currently reads, when you compare it side by side with the existing law, what would the technical change to that existing law be? That's my first point. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of Senator Taitigui's amendment, principally on the basis of how we conduct business as a body. You know, I agree also with the retiring speaker that perhaps technically it's superfluous, perhaps even in the words of another technical staffer, it's not necessary. What I think is necessary is that we're clear in our intent. I'm a firm believer that just because we're unaware doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And while I support the intent of the bill as written, I'm also amenable to the technical amendments that were introduced by the senator, just so that, you know, we can prevent a future practice that in the event a bill is passed into law, but it's not codified, we're going to see a senator possibly in the future introduce legislation to make that race, if you will. Not that that's the intent of the prime author of the bill, but that they would probably regurgitate, copy and paste, reintroduce for the sake of, I don't know, more expedited form of codification. So I just want to state again, I have a question for the author or whoever can respond appropriately. What would the technical change to the existing law be? And I want to state that I support the amendment.
Senator Castro. Senator Torres. Well, Senator Castro, I'm sorry. When you said the author, is the author of the bill or author of the amendment?
That would be the author of the bill or any other senator who's supporting the amendment, the bill, ma'am.
Senator Torres, would you like to answer that inquiry?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'll yield to the question. There was, in fact, standards for family foster homes that was established by Public Law 23-143 on January 2nd, 1997. The one technical change that I'm making to this is on page 3 at about lines 24 to 25, or 24 to 26, where it defines family foster home means a home certified by the Department of Public Health and Social Services, which provides substitute family care on a 24-hour basis. This care shall be for no more than 6 children in one home, including the number of children of the foster parents, and this is where it is changed, unless otherwise approved by the Bureau of Social Services Administration. So, and it may be referenced in another place, but that essentially, Madam Speaker, is the one tweak.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Castro, does that
There are two
answer
tweaks.
your inquiry?
It does, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Anyone else on the amendment? If not, Senator Tello, you may close.
Joe, you didn't want it? Wait, comment.
I apologize. Senator,
Madam Speaker, I just want to ask a very general question, ma'am.
so I apologize. I'm going, did you have a point of information? I was going to allow the author of the amendment to close on the amendment. Did you have a point of inquiry?
I want to speak on the amendment in general, so I just need more
I will allow
clarity.
you that before I close. Sorry, I did not
Okay.
recognize you. You're recognized, Senator
Thank you,
Sinaki.
Madam Speaker. My only concern is that we're going to put this in this bill. Is this going to be a requirement on every bill? Because every time we pass a bill, it supersedes any public law that does exist. So is that going to be now the norm? Because if it's not going to be the norm, then what makes this a requirement? I'm just very curious, because every time we introduce a bill, we always mention to amend, to add. So is this going to be the legal side saying every bill has to end? I guess on this bill specifically, it should end on page 17, on line 15, under the effective date. And it should be the last sentence then, that after promulgated in Section 2 of this act, this supersedes any current, something's got to make sense, ma'am, and I'm just asking that
Senator
question.
San Augustine,
Thank
would
you.
that be to the author of the amendment?
It's
A question to the author of the amendment?
Yes, and to
Thank
anybody
you.
else that wants to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Tadegui, would you like to yield to that question?
Yes, I would, Madam Speaker, and I hope I can answer your question, because this is not a severability clause that's always usually on every bill. However, after speaking to the compiler of law, to make it clear, because there's already a law that does the same thing that this law does. There's already a law on the books that does it. And as I mentioned before, because of that, it's not like you're amending. It would be real simple, actually, Madam Speaker, if we pulled this bill back and then make an amendment to the current law, Public Law 23-143, amending section, chapter and amending it to read that one small section that the bill changes from its original law. But, you know, we talked about it and compromised, and according to the compiler of law, as I stated, case law shows that the implication is always deferred. In other words, you can go ahead and pass this bill, and it'll already supersede the other bill. However, it's been proven that this is disfavored to do so. So she asked that we make it clear in the law that it supersedes the current law. That's all it does. Because what we're dealing here is very different. It's a law that's already in the books, and now we have the same law sitting in front of us today. So it's very clear, and that's what the compiler asked us to do. And I don't think, no, in the future we have to do this to everyone unless there's an exact same law out there that you're introducing. I hope that answers the
Senator
question.
San Agustin, thank you. If not, I already entertained her. On the amendment to close, Senator Tydegui, you are recognized.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker. As I mentioned, even our legal counsel said it's as simple as this, and that is to incorporate this amendment into the law to make it clear for everybody. And I'm asking my colleagues to please support this. Let's be responsible. Let's make it clear in the law what we're doing. We're simply substituting the current law and making it into Public Law 135. That I agree and I support wholeheartedly to increase the amount of foster children in the home. I agree with that. So, Madam Speaker, I request for a roll call on this.
There has been an objection on the floor. All those in favor, please signify
Roll
by
call.
raising.
Roll call.
There's one roll call. I hear a second roll call. If you don't speak in the mic, I'm not going to acknowledge you. I have two roll calls. There's been an objection. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. On the motion, in favor of the Senator Tello Tydegui amendment to this act shall supersede Public Law 23-143. There was an objection on the floor. All those in favor of Senator Tydegui's amendment, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion fails. On the motion, on the main motion, Senator Torres, we had an amendment that you spoke on. I'm going to entertain it at this time. Do you have a point of information, Senator
No, Madam
Tydegui?
Speaker, I think I still have the floor. And I'm not done.
Yeah. She's exhausted.
Yeah, I do.
Senator Tydegui, I do apologize. The time has expired, and we had your amendments, and we had you speaking on that. Yes. Senator Tydegui, I will afford you the 45 seconds left for you to speak.
Madam Speaker, I make a motion that we send this bill back to committee.
There has been a motion to send the bill back to committee. Is there an objection? There has been an objection. All those in favor to send it back to committee signify by raising your hand, please. On that motion, motion fails. Senator Torres.
Madam
Ladies
Speaker,
and gentlemen,
if there is no further discussion on it, I move that this Bill 135-35 be moved into the third reading file.
yes, I apologize, Senator Torres, but you did have an amendment that has not been, unless you want to move to withdraw this amendment.
That arguably could be superfluous to to reinstate the authority already given to the compiler. So I don't need that amendment.
So on the motion
thank
to
you.
withdraw Senator Torres's amendment, are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. On the motion to place the bill in the third reading file, Senator, there's a motion. Do you object?
Well, you moved rather quickly. Still had an amendment on the main motion.
I asked, Senator, I do apologize. I asked if there was anyone else on the main motion.
And I raised my hand.
No, you did. You did not. I apologize. The gavel was down, and I acknowledge the author of the legislation.
Notwithstanding the House rules, then, I still have an amendment that I've been waiting for 2 days to do.
On the motion for reconsideration, all those in favor say aye. Is there any objection? I'm sorry. Any objections? Is there an objection for a motion to reconsider to allow Senator March Taitanu to act on the bill? Is there an objection? Hearing none. On the main motion, Senator Taitanu, you are recognized. Do you have the motion on? Have you passed out the motion, Senator Taitanu?
I have the amendment, but I'm not sure that it's been passed out. Has anybody received?
Can you
Okay.
ask the Sergeant of Arms, please? And can I have the copy of the amendment? Senator Taitanu, do you have the is it one amendment? Do you have, how many amendments do you have, Senator? Two. Are both copies being disseminated at this time? Can the Sergeant of Arms please give me the copies? Senator Taitanu, I will allow you to go ahead and start speaking in the interest of time.
So the first amendment that I have is just to clarify the safety of the child in the foster family, and to just ensure that there's clarity when we're talking about the rights of the foster parent. So for the First Amendment, it is on page 10, line 25. To amend the bill to read, the decision to remain a foster parent, provided that they maintain their certificate of approval for licensing as a family foster home. So when we're talking about the rights of a foster parent and a foster family, I just feel that we need to be making sure that the rights of the foster child is given full consideration. And so just to ensure that we understand that providing that certificate of approval, that all due diligence has been maintained, that their rights do not necessarily follow them if they have lost, if they have had their certificate be revoked.
Thank you, Senator March Taitanu. All those wishing to speak on the Senator Taitanu amendment, Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I truly appreciate the diligence and thoroughness that my colleagues have given to Bill 135-35. I at this time would like to object to the amendment on this basis. I believe that the Bill 135-35 was very specific to one type of amendment to the foster care standards. And as we know, a public hearing was convened on that. Public hearings, we know, are intended to obtain public testimony or comment before significant decisions are made. And at public hearings, it also is an opportunity for people who attend to speak if they so desire. But public hearings are also designed so that the comments should be confined to the matter at hand. And I would like very much to suggest that the way that we can proceed with very valid and pertinent and necessary revisions, or perhaps proposed revisions, can be done in a venue at a time that is separate and apart from Bill 135, which is very specific. And because of the public hearing not addressing these things, I think all stakeholders, need to be heard, and it needs to be vetted with the degree that it deserves. So with that, I respectfully object, and I also, with the caveat that I would be more than happy to engage in further revisions of the rules and the standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Will Castro on the Taitano amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a point of inquiry for the author of the amendment.
If you can address it to me, please.
Yes,
Thank you, Senator.
Madam Speaker, if I can direct my question to
Yes,
the author of the
please.
amendment. My question is simple. What are the implications if a foster parent doesn't have a certificate? This is an area I'm completely not aware of, and if she would indulge, I'd appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you, Senator Castro. Senator Taitano, would you like to yield to that question?
Well, I will do my best to answer it, although this is not an area that I have looked at extremely thoroughly. So, like I said, I will do my best. So, my understanding is, as I was mentioning, if they are a foster parent, that they maintain their certificate of approval, that there are certain processes in place, there are certain issues that are looked at that validate their being able to continue being a foster parent. So if they did not have that certificate, their ability to claim that they can continue to be a foster parent, I think, would be difficult to do because if they're already identified as a foster parent, there's the implication that they have gone through the approval process, is what I would say. But I would also yield to the author of the bill, who has gone through the development of this bill and has gone through it for many more months than I. So if she has further clarification, although I do have a point of information about her objection, but I can yield to her first if she wishes to yield.
Senator Taitano, Senator Castro, based on the inquiry, does that suffice?
Actually, I like the recommendation that she made earlier. It didn't answer my question. So if I can be more clear, perhaps, I liken it to maybe being a teacher, a certified teacher. So anyone with a degree for which there's a vacancy in DOE can technically be employed to teach. As an example, you're an accountant, you could teach at DOE 6th or 12th grade secondary. But the certifications that are required by the state, in this case DOE, to teach a certain area, they affirm your subject matter qualifications, whether it's for social studies or just to deliver certain types of instructional methodologies. So for this, I am completely unaware of what the implications of having a certificate or not having a certificate that makes you a foster parent is. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What does that tell me as a member of the citizenry?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Castro. Are there anyone else wishing to speak on the Titano amendment? If not, Senator Titano, would you like to close?
So with my offer to yield to others, but apparently nobody else has provided information. So the intent here is to just ensure that the rights of the child are being upheld, that the foster parent, should they be continuing to be a foster parent and be afforded the right as a foster parent, that it should be that there is that certificate of approval process in place. What I would say to the objection is this bill is 17 pages long. All of it is underlined, meaning that it is all introduced as new, while recognizing that it was already put into place by a public law, but all 17 pages of it are underlined as something new. All 17 pages were given to everybody to review, and people did comment on a variety of things beyond the number 6. If it was the number 6 that was going to be the only thing that was going to be looked at, then I really question all 17 pages being underlined, all 17 pages being introduced, all 17 pages being part of this bill as something underlined and as something new to be added in. I have had a legal opinion that once something is brought up in this way and it's amended, that it is all up for potential amendment. And I am not going to create a gap, whether it be for a day, a week, or a month, or longer, that potentially says that parents have, foster parents have this right without a certificate of approval, which is a process that's in place to assure that the child is in a safe environment. Sujas Masi.
Thank you, Senator March Taitsino. There has been an objection to Senator Kelly March Taitsino's amendment. All those in favor to accept the amendment, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator March Taitsino, you still have the floor.
Sujas Masi, Madam Speaker. I have a second amendment. This is on page 5, line 15. It's more of a grammatical error, and it's not written by the author. It's from the 1977 version. So it's one of those grammatical errors where a prepositional phrase can change the meaning of a sentence. And so again, just for clarity, obviously this has been working for 22, 26 years for a length of time. But for clarity into the future, since we are amending things, to just make sure that the sentence is correct. So this reads, according to the amendment, to amend the bill to read, relative applicants, in parentheses, persons who are not related to the foster child by blood or through marriage, end of parentheses, will be required to apply for foster parent certification. So I suppose that's the part of the answer to the former question. But anyways, and rather than saying that they are not related to the foster child by marriage to the foster child, which I do not believe was the intent of the author in 1997, it should say who are not related to the foster child by blood or through marriage itself.
Thank you, Senator March Taitsino. On the amendment, are there anyone wishing to speak? If not, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Senator March Titano, you have the floor. Are you done? You're recognized.
Yes, Joyce Massey, I'll go ahead and let it rest.
Thank you. Cesar Masi, Senator March Titano. Senator Torres, on the motion to put down to the voting file.
Yes, I move that it be moved to the third reading file. I want to thank everyone for their input. This was rather unusual and unconventional process, but I'm glad that we were able to at least get this far, and hopefully my colleagues will see the need to act on this in the interest of foster children and foster care homes that just need some allowance to take in more kids who are in dire need of foster care. Sidus Masi.
Cesar Masi, Senator Torres, on the motion to put the bill number 135-35 COR into the voting file without any objections. Motion carries. Vice Speaker Nelson, we have one more bill, ladies and gentlemen. We have Bill 140 on the agenda. Vice Speaker, Majority Leader Nelson, you are recognized.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker, I make a motion to recess till tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen.